It was just past 6 in the morning when Marcus stirred awake, his eyes barely open. The early sunlight filtered through the blinds, painting stripes of gold across his bedroom floor. He let out a deep sigh, already dreading the busy day ahead. As a single dad, mornings were always hectic. Getting his 8-year-old daughter, Lila, ready for school, making breakfast, and rushing to work. But today felt different. There was a strange stillness in the air, a quiet tension he couldn't explain. Marcus rubbed his eyes and sat up. That's when he noticed something that made his heart skip a beat. Sitting cross-legged on the edge of his bed was a woman. Not just any woman. She was tall, sharply dressed, with piercing eyes that seemed to look straight through him. And she was wearing his shirt, the one he had left on the chair last night. "What?" Marcus stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman didn't answer at first. She just stared at him, her expression calm but intense, like she had been expecting him to wake up at exactly this moment. Her presence filled the room, and Marcus felt frozen. He wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but his mouth wouldn't move. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and controlled. "You don't remember me, but we have unfinished business." Marcus's mind raced. Unfinished business? Who was she? And why was she in his bedroom at this hour, wearing his clothes? His first thought was that he was dreaming, that this was some strange hallucination caused by too little sleep. But her gaze, sharp and real, told him otherwise. He swung his legs off the bed and stood up slowly, trying not to make any sudden moves. Excuse me. Who are you? How did you get in here?" The woman tilted her head slightly, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Names don't matter right now. What matters is that you remember soon." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. His hands trembled as he tried to process the situation. He glanced toward the door, wondering if Lila was still asleep in the next room, oblivious to the chaos unfolding in her father's bedroom. He couldn't risk her seeing this. "Look, I think you made a mistake," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You need to leave. Now." She shook her head, slowly and deliberately. "I can't. Not yet. There are things you need to understand first." Marcus's stomach twisted. He had faced challenges before, work deadlines, parenting struggles, even financial stress, but nothing had ever left him feeling this powerless. This was different. This was personal, and he didn't even know why. The woman leaned forward slightly, resting her hands on the edge of the bed. "You will remember," she said, almost as if it were a promise. "And when you do, everything will change." Marcus swallowed hard. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing in his ears. He wanted answers. He wanted to understand why this stranger, the CEO with an air of authority that made him feel small, had entered his life in such a shocking way. But before he could ask another question, she stood up, smooth and controlled, like a shadow moving across the room. Without another word, she turned toward the door, paused, and glanced back over her shoulder. "Be ready," she said. And then she was gone. Marcus stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty room, the faint smell of her perfume lingering in the air. His shirt, was still on the bed where she'd been sitting. His mind was spinning, trying to make sense of the impossible. Who was she? Why had she come? And what did she mean by unfinished business? One thing was certain. His life was about to change, and he had no idea how. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling of unease as he moved through his morning routine. Every sound in his small apartment felt amplified. The ticking of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, even the distant honk of a car outside. He kept glancing at the bed, half expecting the mysterious woman to reappear, wearing his shirt and staring at it with those piercing eyes. By the time Lila shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing her sleepy eyes, Marcus was a bundle of nerves. He forced a smile, pretending everything was normal. "Morning, pumpkin. Did you sleep well?" Lila yawned, completely unaware of the chaos in her father's mind. "Yeah, Daddy. Why do you look so tired?" "Just a long night," Marcus replied, his voice tighter than he intended. He hated lying to her, but he had no choice. Not yet. After dropping Lila off at school, Marcus returned home, his mind racing with questions. Who was she? What did she mean by unfinished business? And why did she appear so suddenly, as if she had a right to be in his life? He couldn't ignore it any longer. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at the empty chair across from him, and muttered under his breath, "Okay, I need to figure this out." And then, almost as if summoned, the woman appeared again. This time, she was standing in the doorway, confident and calm, as though she had always belonged there. "You're thinking too much," she said softly. "But that's natural. You don't remember yet. Soon you will." Marcus jumped, nearly knocking over his coffee cup. How are you back? You can't just—" "I can," she interrupted, her eyes sharp but not unkind. "And I will, until you understand." Her presence filled the room again, but this time Marcus noticed something different. There was a softness in her gaze, a careful observation, as though she were trying to measure his reaction. He realized she wasn't just here to scare him. She had a purpose. "Look," he said, trying to take control. "I don't know what's going on. I don't know you. And I really need to know, why are you in my life?" She leaned against the counter, her arms crossed. "You've been running from it your whole life," she said, cryptic but firm. "Your choices, your mistakes, they're all connected. I'm here to make sure you see it before it's too late." Marcus shook his head, frustrated. "I don't even understand what you mean." She smiled faintly, a flash of amusement in her otherwise serious demeanor. "You will. But first you have to trust me. Even a little. Trust." Marcus had trusted few people in his life. As a single dad, he had learned to rely mostly on himself. Yet, despite the fear, a small part of him felt drawn to her. Something about the way she spoke, the confidence, the clarity made him feel that she wasn't lying. Not entirely. "And what if I don't?" he asked cautiously. "Then you'll regret it," she replied softly, almost like a warning wrapped in a promise. "Because the choice isn't really yours." Marcus's heart pounded. Her words were unsettling, yet strangely magnetic. He wanted to argue, to push her away, but he couldn't. Something deep inside told him that this encounter, no matter how terrifying, was the start of something he couldn't ignore. The tension in the room was thick, electric. Marcus felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into a foggy abyss. One wrong move and everything could collapse, but staying still didn't feel safe either. The woman straightened, her gaze unwavering. "I'll give you a warning," she said. "The time to act is short, and soon you won't have a choice." With that, she disappeared, leaving Marcus alone once again. The room felt colder now, heavier, as if her presence had carried a weight that lingered long after she left. He sank into the chair, running a hand over his face. Something was coming. Something big, and he had no idea how to stop it. Marcus sat in his living room long after the strange visitor vanished. The morning sun had climbed higher, but it brought no warmth, only a chill that seemed to seep into his bones. He kept replaying her words in his head. "Your choices, your mistakes, they're all connected." He didn't understand them, yet they resonated in a way that made his stomach knot. As he sipped his cold coffee, fragments of memory began to surface, like shadows from a forgotten past. A year ago, he remembered attending a business event for a local charity. He had been there mostly for networking, trying to meet people who could help his small side business grow. He remembered a confident, sharply dressed woman who had spoken to him briefly, someone who seemed to know more than she let on. He brushed her off politely, thinking she was just another ambitious executive. Then there was that time last summer, when a client had mentioned a deal gone wrong, and Marcus had shrugged it off as office gossip. But now, her words echoed differently, and he wondered if somehow she had been watching him all this time. Shaking his head, Marcus tried to focus on reality. "No, this can't be happening," he told himself. Yet every instinct screamed that it was. Something wasn't right. He felt observed. The feeling intensified when his phone buzzed. A new email from an unknown address. "Check your past. Everything starts there. She is waiting for your understanding." Marcus froze, his hand trembling as he scrolled through the message again. There were no attachments, no name, just those 3 lines. He had never received anything like this before, and yet it felt connected to her, the woman who had invaded his morning. He tried to shake off the unease and focus on normal life. But strange things began happening around him, subtle at first. The TV would turn on by itself, showing brief flashes of images he couldn't fully see. The lights flickered for no reason, and sometimes in the corner of his vision, he thought he saw shadows move, shapes that didn't belong to anyone in the apartment. Marcus's mind raced. Was he going crazy? Or was someone or something really out there orchestrating this? He thought about telling Lila, but the idea of frightening her made him hesitate. He had to figure this out first. Alone, desperate for answers, Marcus grabbed his notebook and started writing everything down. The woman's words, the email, the strange flashes, even the memories he tried to ignore. Page after page filled with questions, half-answers, and theories. Something clicked as he reread his notes. Every clue pointed back to her. Every strange event, every memory, somehow connected. He paused and looked out the window at the busy street below. People walked by, unaware of the strange tension building inside his apartment. It was as if the world outside had no idea what was about to unfold. Suddenly, his gaze fell on the shirt she had worn, the one she had left on the bed. He picked it up and noticed a small, folded piece of paper tucked into the pocket. With trembling hands, he unfolded it. Inside was a simple message, written in elegant handwriting. Trust the past. It will guide your future. Don't ignore me. Marcus's heart raced. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't a dream. She, was reaching out to him in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. And the more he tried to rationalize, the more impossible it became. He sank back into the chair, the paper clutched in his hands. One thought echoed in his mind louder than anything else. I have to remember. But what if what I remember changes everything? The apartment was silent once again, but Marcus knew it wouldn't stay that way. Something was coming, and he had no choice but to face it. Marcus couldn't ignore it any longer. The strange morning, the mysterious woman, the cryptic email, and the note in his shirt pocket, they all pointed to one undeniable truth. Something unusual was happening, and it involved him. He knew he had to take action. But where to start? He grabbed his jacket and headed out, pretending to run errands, but his real goal was clear. He had to find her. His mind raced with possibilities. Where would a powerful seal go? Which of her known offices or public locations could he check without being seen as a stalker? He decided to start small. Local business districts, upscale cafes where she might meet contacts. Anything that could provide a clue. As he walked through the bustling streets, Marcus's mind wandered back to that business event a year ago. He remembered her confident voice, her eyes scanning the room like a hawk, her smile sharp but knowing. There had been something in her presence then, a mix of authority and intent. He had brushed it off as intimidation, but now he realized it had been the first hint of this unfolding mystery. His first stop was a high-rise office downtown, a building that housed many of the city's top companies. Marcus wasn't sure she worked here, but he hoped for a clue. The receptionist glanced at him with polite curiosity as he asked questions, but no one seemed to know her. Frustration crept in, but Marcus pushed forward. Determined, he decided to follow leads in what he did know. He remembered seeing her name on a company press release linked to a local charity fundraiser. If she was attending events like that, he could find her in public, watch for patterns, gather information. That afternoon, Marcus found himself at a glimmering hotel ballroom, where the charity event was being held. People mingled, glasses clinked, and soft music floated through the air. Marcus scanned the room, his eyes darting from one well-dressed guest to another. Then there she was. She wasn't alone. Her posture exuded control, her presence demanding attention even from across the room. Marcus ducked behind a column, his heart pounding. He wanted answers, but he also knew he couldn't approach her directly. At least, not yet. He observed as she moved gracefully, interacting with others, her smile warm but her gaze sharp, almost predatory. Every so often, she would glance in his direction. Marcus froze each time, realizing that she might already know he was following her. The thought made him nervous, but he couldn't back down. Not now. As the evening progressed, Marcus noticed subtle signs that something was happening beyond what he could see. A brief glance exchanged between two suited men, a whispered phone conversation where her name was mentioned, and small, almost imperceptible gestures from her, hand signals, looks, directed at someone or something he couldn't identify. His mind raced. Was she protecting him? Or was he being lured into something bigger? The tension grew unbearable. Every instinct screamed that he was in the middle of something he didn't fully understand. Something dangerous, yet compelling in a way he couldn't ignore. Before he could gather more, a hotel staff member approached, quietly informing him that the ballroom was closing soon. Marcus realized he had to leave, but he didn't want to give up. He needed more. He needed to understand why she had entered his life, why she had chosen him, and what unfinished business meant. As he walked back to his car, Marcus felt a mixture of fear, curiosity, and determination. One thought kept repeating in his mind, she's not done with me. And whatever this is, it's only getting started. Marcus glanced back at the towering hotel, its lights gleaming in the night. Somewhere inside, she was waiting, watching, planning, and he knew, deep down, he had no choice but to follow. Marcus couldn't sleep that night. His mind raced with every detail from the day. The brief glimpses of her at the charity event, the subtle signals, the feeling that she was always a step ahead. Something about her presence both terrified and fascinated him. He knew he had to confront her. He had no idea what would happen, but waiting in fear was no longer an option. The next morning, he found himself standing outside a sleek office building downtown, the sun glinting off the glass walls. He didn't know exactly which floor she might be on, but intuition pulled him inside. Taking a deep breath, Marcus stepped into the lobby, trying to appear calm despite the pounding of his heart. He asked the receptionist about a meeting with the CEO. The woman behind the desk raised an eyebrow, but didn't question him. She has a visitor scheduled, she said, and before Marcus could respond, she gestured toward the elevators. Up he went, each floor making his nerves tighten. When the elevator doors opened on the top floor, Marcus felt a strange mix of anticipation and fear. He walked down the long hallway, guided by instinct, until he reached a door slightly ajar. And there she was. She was seated behind a massive desk, her posture calm, her expression unreadable. The room smelled faintly of coffee and polished wood, but the tension was unmistakable. Marcus cleared his throat. "I need answers," he said, his voice firmer than he felt. "I don't understand why you're in my life, why you came into my home. I need to know." The CEO leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled in thought. "I was wondering when you'd finally come," she said, almost amused. "You've been running, Marcus. You've been avoiding the truth, and now you have no choice but to face it." "What truth?" he demanded, his chest tightening. "All I've gotten are riddles and threats. I deserve real answers." Her gaze softened for a brief moment, almost imperceptibly, before hardening again. "You think this is about riddles or threats? It's not. It's about your life, your choices, and the consequences you've ignored." Marcus felt frustration rise, mingling with fear. "Consequences? I don't even know what you're talking about. You came into my home, invaded my life, and I have no idea why. How am I supposed to deal with that?" She stood up slowly, walking toward him, her presence commanding yet oddly reassuring. "You don't have to understand everything yet," she said quietly. "Not until you're ready. But there are things you must do, decisions only you can make. And if you don't, everything you care about will change." Her words hit Marcus like a punch. He wanted to argue, to push back, but deep down he knew she wasn't lying. He felt the weight of her truth pressing on him, heavy and undeniable. "Why me?" he asked finally, his voice softer, almost a whisper. "Why now?" She paused, her eyes meeting his. "Because I can't do this without you. And because whether you like it or not, our paths were always meant to cross." Marcus swallowed hard, a storm of emotions churning inside him. Fear, anger, curiosity, an undeniable pull toward the mystery she represented. For the first time, he realized this confrontation was not about control or intimidation. It was about preparing him, testing him, and forcing him to face something far bigger than either of them. Before he could respond, she stepped back and gestured toward the window, overlooking the city below. "Think carefully, Marcus. Your next move will define everything. He turned to look at the city lights twinkling in the distance, his mind spinning. He had entered this room seeking answers, but what he found was a challenge, one that demanded courage, trust, and the willingness to face an unknown path. Marcus clenched his fists. He didn't have all the answers yet, but one thing was certain. He couldn't back down now. Whatever came next, he had to be ready. Marcus barely slept that night. The confrontation at the CEO's office replayed in his mind like a movie on endless loop. The words, the gaze, the weight of the choices she had forced him to consider. He couldn't stop thinking about her. The way she moved, her calm authority, the unsettling feeling that she always knew more than she should. By the next morning, determination had replaced fear. He had to see her again. He needed answers, real ones this time. He arrived at her office building earlier than usual. The city still quiet, the streets nearly empty. Something deep inside told him she was waiting, not just physically, but with intentions he couldn't yet grasp. When he stepped inside, the receptionist gave him a knowing look. She led him up to the top floor, without a word. The moment the door opened, Marcus felt the air shift. She was there, standing by the window, her silhouette sharp against the morning light. She didn't turn immediately. "You came back," she said softly, not as a question but as a statement of fact. "I need answers," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "No riddles, no games. Why me? Why now?" She finally turned to face him, and in her eyes, he saw a flicker of something he couldn't identify. Compassion? Sadness? Or a quiet determination that had been hidden all along. "You've always thought your life was ordinary, Marcus," she began, her voice steady, almost gentle. "But you were never meant to live in ordinary ways. Every choice you've made, every path you've taken, they led here, to this moment. To me." Marcus frowned, confusion and frustration battling inside him. "I don't understand. What are you talking about?" She stepped closer, her hands unclasped now, open and calm. "Years ago, you unknowingly prevented a disaster. A deal, a plan, something that could have ruined thousands of lives. You didn't know it at the time, but you changed the course of events. That's why I'm here. Because you need to understand the magnitude of what you've done and what still needs to be done." Marcus's chest tightened. I don't remember any of that. Are you saying I'm responsible for something I didn't even know existed?" "Yes," she said softly, a weight in her words. "But responsibility isn't a punishment. It's a choice. And this choice is yours alone." He took a step back, trying to absorb her revelation. The idea that his ordinary, chaotic life as a single dad somehow connected to a hidden world of corporate power, secret deals, and life-altering consequences was almost too much to grasp. Yet, as he looked at her, he realized she wasn't exaggerating. Her calm authority, the confidence in her eyes, it was real. Marcus sank into a chair, running a hand over his face. "So, everything, the visit, the note, the warning, it was all about me realizing this?" "Partly," she said, her voice softer now. "But mostly it's about the choice you're about to make. You can step back and pretend nothing happened, or you can step forward and face it. Either way, the consequences are real, and the people who depend on you are counting on you to make the right decision." He stared at her, a storm of emotions raging inside him. Fear, anger, confusion, and something else. Determination. Somehow, amidst the chaos and the mystery, he felt a strange clarity. The confrontation, the suspense, the strange morning, it had all been building to this moment. "And if I step forward," he asked quietly, "then you embrace your power, Marcus," she said, her eyes steady. "You accept that your life is bigger than you ever imagined, that your choices ripple farther than you can see. And you prepare for what comes next, because the world you know is about to change." Marcus took a deep breath, the weight of the revelation settling over him like a heavy cloak. He had a choice now, one decision that could alter everything. And for the first time, he realized he wasn't just being tested. He was being trusted. He stood, meeting her gaze. "All right," he said firmly. "I'll step forward. I'll face whatever comes next." A small, satisfied smile touched her lips. "Good," she said simply. because there's no turning back now. And as Marcus left the office that day, a strange mix of fear and exhilaration coursed through him. He didn't know what awaited, but one thing was certain. His life, and everyone he cared about, would never be the same again. Marcus felt the weight of the world pressing on him as he stepped out of the CEO's office. The revelation from yesterday still buzzed in his mind. The choices he'd made, the unseen consequences, and the responsibility that now rested squarely on his shoulders. His ordinary life had been shattered, replaced by a reality far bigger and more complicated than he'd ever imagined. He walked through the city streets, the sunlight reflecting off the glass buildings, but his focus was inward. Every step felt heavy with meaning. He had a choice to make, one that would define not just his future, but the future of those around him. He thought of Lila, his little girl sleeping peacefully at home, unaware of the invisible threads connecting her father to events far beyond their world. When Marcus returned to his apartment, he didn't immediately check his phone or the emails. Instead, he sat at the table and allowed himself a moment of clarity. The CEO's words echoed, "Your choices ripple farther than you can see." He finally understood that fear alone couldn't guide him. He had to act with purpose, with courage, and with the trust he had long reserved for only himself. Later that evening, the phone rang. It was her. Marcus hesitated before answering. "Marcus," she said, her tone calm but firm. "Are you ready?" He took a deep breath. "I am," he replied. There was no bravado in his voice, just resolve. "Good," she said, "because what comes next isn't easy. But you've proven you're capable. You've accepted your part in this. Now you must follow through." Marcus knew she wasn't talking about a simple decision. He didn't fully understand the scope of what lay ahead, but he trusted her. Somehow, he knew she wouldn't lead him astray. The next days were a whirlwind. Marcus followed her instructions carefully, making calls, arranging meetings, and acting with precision. Each step revealed more of the hidden world he had never seen. Businesses, deals, and people operating in shadows, all subtly influencing lives, including his own. Yet, the more he acted, the more he realized that the real power wasn't in wealth or influence. It was in understanding responsibility, in knowing how one choice could ripple into countless lives. Throughout all, the CEO appeared when needed, guiding him, challenging him, and occasionally testing his limits. Marcus learned to read the small signs, the subtle hints, and the unspoken messages. He realized that she wasn't just a mysterious force in his life. She was a mentor, a guide, and, in ways he didn't expect, a mirror of what he could become. Finally, after days that felt like weeks, Marcus stood in the same office where it had all begun. The city stretched below, endless and full of possibilities. She looked at him, her sharp gaze softened by the faintest smile. "You've done well," she said. "You faced your fears, made the hard choices, and accepted the weight of your life. Few could have done what you just did." Marcus exhaled, feeling a mix of relief, pride, and exhaustion. "So it's over?" he asked. She shook her head slightly. "Nothing truly ends, Marcus. But you've taken the first step. Your life will never be the same, but that's not a curse. It's an opportunity. You now understand how much control you have, even when it feels like life is out of your hands." He nodded, understanding at last that the confrontation, the riddles, the fear, it had all been leading him to this moment of clarity and power. He felt stronger, more aware, and strangely grateful for the chaos that had entered his life. As Marcus left the office for the final time, he glanced back at the towering building, the sunlight glinting off its walls. Somewhere inside, she watched, planning, guiding, but now he was ready. The city below seemed different somehow, alive with possibilities. Marcus knew that challenges awaited, but he no longer feared them. He had faced the unknown, embraced his role, and emerged stronger. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a small, thrilling question remained. What would she do next? Even though the story of this encounter had reached its resolution, Marcus understood one truth clearly. In a world full of shadows and secrets, life was never truly ordinary, and that was exactly how he wanted it.